Welcome to lesson 86 of A Course in Miracles. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And I'm going to say it again. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And this is the plan that God has for you for salvation. And it's really, I mean, once again, it just brings me back to choice, to go on into listening to what the ego is telling me to do and to be, or just surrender and in the silence, hear the guidance of the divine. So it's two different and very defined ways of connecting to ourselves. So one is through a lot of noise, really. When we listen to the ego's voice, there's fear added to it. There's stress added to it. There's probably happiness and, that false sense of happiness, like, oh my God, I'm going to get a new car. Woo! That's sort of not lasting sense of happiness. So when we listen to the ego's voice, there's always like a demand on us. There's always like it's like a push. And if you really start observing yourselves throughout the day, you'll realize that when we listen to the ego's voice, most of the times do not take us to a very healthy place. I mean, I practice and I see it with me and my relationships, my closest relationships. The ego is telling me they should be doing that, they should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be this type of mother, and that voice drives me crazy. And that voice really takes me to a no through road. Either I react, either I get confused, I don't even know what to do. So that voice, the voice of the ego, has an intention. And the intention is to maintain us confused and disempowered, in these little daily dynamics that just waste our energy, really, without moving forward. Whereas God's will is the only one. God's plan for salvation will work. God's plan is the only one that works. And the idea is to make space for that voice to be heard more and more each time, because we're so used to all these voices that, there's not silence in our minds. And I know that we want silence sometimes. We want silence, we live in busy cities. We have noisy families. We got the internet, that's the radio, the TV. But all that noise, all that external noise, it only mirrors our internal noise. So it's about really stopping and listening all the voices in your head. And I know that it sounds a bit like if we're a bit, but I think we are. I think we are a little bit, lose the plot, lost in this illusion until we start finding our center, until we start connecting to that silence, until we start listening to the voice of God, the voice of the divine in you. Yeah. So it says God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception of this. So my perception might be anger, or this violence, or this poverty, or this hunger, or whatever my perception is in my realm, because we all, although we live in the same planet, we all have our own individual TVs almost in front of our eyes. We're all playing a different movie, because each of our movies is designed by our individual thoughts and beliefs. So we're all in our own little worlds, really, until we stop and we start realizing this and we start connecting from the heart. Yeah. This is not exception in God's plan for my salvation. Let me perceive this only in the light of God's plan for salvation. So like the lesson yesterday was light and vision gives us a clear vision, gives us truth. So there has to be light in it. You know, we need to connect to the light. And the other part of the lesson, the practice today, is holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. And we can really see it, you know, this duality that we have in our minds, you know, that one tells us one thing and the other tells us another thing. And oh my God, this is crazy. And because God is acting through me as salvation, then my ego, which is in my mind as well, is attacking me, is attacking God's plan for salvation. So everything else that is happening, that I'm doing, that is attacking and is going against God's plan for salvation. So make space today for silence. Make space today to connect to yourselves and see if you can hear the voice of the divine in the silence. So this is a practice for all of us. We're so used to listening to the loud voice of the ego that may we listen to the divine whisper within ourselves more and more until it becomes even louder. God bless you and see you tomorrow for lesson 87.